Muhammad's wives are called the mothers of believers. Interestingly, Muhammad was originally called the father of believers in the Quran. But you can read today's Quran until your brain turns into hummus, and you'll never find a verse that calls Muhammad the father of believers. Why did Muslims disown Muhammad as their father? Let's find out. Muhammad's wives are called the mothers of believers because of Surah 33, verse 6. The verse reads, "The Prophet is closer to the believers than their own selves, and his wives are their mothers." Blood relations among each other have closer personal ties in the decree of Allah than the brotherhood of believers and muhajirs. Muhajirs are the Muslims who fled Mecca. Nevertheless, do ye what is just to your closest friends. Such is the writing of the decree of Allah. So, Muhammad's wives are the mothers of believers. Hey, what's this? It looks like there's a footnote. I wonder what sort of valuable information we'll find in said footnote. Here it is. In spiritual relationships, the Prophet is entitled to more respect and consideration than blood relations. The believers should follow him rather than their fathers or mothers or brothers, where there is conflict of duties. He is even nearer, closer to our real interests, than our own selves. In some qiras, I love qiras, which are different versions of the Quran, even though Muslims insist that there's only one Quran. In some qiras, like that of Ubay ibn Ka'b, occur also the words, "and he is a father of them," which imply his spiritual relationship and connection with the words, "and his wives are their mothers." Thus, his spiritual fatherhood would be contrasted pointedly with the repudiation of the vulgar superstition of calling anyone like Zayd ibn Haritha by the appellation Zayd ibn Muhammad, Quran 33:40. Such an application is really disrespectful of the Prophet. Now that's strange. In some qiras, like that of Ubay ibn Ka'b, occur also the words, "and he is a father of them." Who was Ubay ibn Ka'b?
Ubay is not some even average Sahabi. He is the Qari of the Quran. He is the master.
So, according to some early versions of the Quran, including the version of the master of the Quran himself, Surah 33, verse 6 should say not only that Muhammad's wives are the mothers of believers, but also that Muhammad is the father of believers. And yet, again, the Quran we have today doesn't call Muhammad the father of believers. Now, we're going to look at another passage about this missing phrase, but notice which chapter we're dealing with. In my last video on the miraculous preservation of the Quran, we saw that according to Muhammad's chief Quran reciter, Ubay ibn Ka'b, more than 200 verses were lost from Surah 33. If we compare the Quran to a block of Swiss cheese because of all the holes in it, Surah 33 is the Swiss cheese of the Swiss cheese. It's the holiest and the cheesiest. Not only did hundreds of verses come up missing, specific phrases simply dropped out of the recitation. But some Muslims had better memories than others, so when they wrote their versions of the Quran, they ended up with Qurans that are different from today's Quran. Here's more on the story from Abu Ubaid's Kitab Fada'il al-Quran. Abdul Ghaffar ibn Daud related to us from Abu Luhaya, from Ali ibn Dinar, from Khalid, that Umar ibn al-Khattab passed by a man who was reading aloud from a codex, "The Prophet is nearer akin to the believers than they are themselves. His wives are their mothers, and he is their father." Surah 33, verse 6. So, this Muslim was reading a Quran that's different from today's Quran. As we're about to see, he was reading from Ubay ibn Ka'b's version of the Quran. Said Umar, "Separate not from me till we find Ubay ibn Ka'b." Umar had to get to the bottom of this. When they came to Ubay ibn Ka'b, he said, "O Ubay, may we not hear how you recite this verse?" Said Ubay, "It was among the things that dropped out." More than 200 verses were lost from this chapter. Ubay says that the phrase, "and he is their father," was among the things that were lost from the standard Muslim recitation. Said Umar, "And why were you away from it then? This is hilarious. Where were you when that part was mysteriously disappearing from the Quran?" Said he, "There kept me away from it what did not keep you. So it dropped out for you, but not for me, because I have a better memory than you." Now, if the phrase, "and he is their father," dropped out of the Quran version that Umar used, but it was still in Ubay's Quran, were there different versions of the Quran? Absolutely. Is there only one Quran? Definitely not. Why do Muslim scholars and apologists tell Muslims that there's only one Quran perfectly preserved from the time of Muhammad? Because they're liars. How are our Muslim friends going to respond? The same way they respond to the fact that hundreds of verses were lost from this chapter. Oh, those things were abrogated. The phrase, "and he was their father," was abrogated. But there are a few problems here. First, abrogation is supposed to refer to Allah canceling certain commands in favor of new commands. But "he is their father" isn't a command, it's a description of Muhammad's relationship to Muslims. Did Muhammad's relationship to Muslims change? Was Muhammad the father of Muslims for a while until Allah changed his mind? Why would Allah abrogate that part of the verse? Why did Allah want Muslims to have mothers but no father? Second, here's a question for Muslims. Is the phrase, "and he is their father," along with the 200 plus verses that were lost from this chapter, a part of Allah's eternal tablet of the Quran? If you say that they aren't in Allah's eternal Quran, then you're saying that hundreds of verses and certain phrases that aren't in Allah's eternal Quran were temporarily added to the earthly Quran, but were eventually removed. If you say that they are in Allah's eternal Quran, then you're saying that the Quran we have today is incomplete. Muhammad is the father of Muslims in Allah's eternal tablet, but he's not the father of Muslims in the Quran Muslims have today. How sad that today's Quran doesn't show Muslims their true relationship to their prophet. Frowny face. Third, notice that the early Muslims were extremely confused about what's supposed to be in the Quran. Umar brings in Ubay ibn Ka'b because he has no idea why Ubay's Quran has different words in it. Ubay has to explain to him that the phrase, "and he is their father," somehow dropped out. Umar and the other Muslims around him don't seem to remember the original version. But if so many Muslims were memorizing the Quran, wouldn't they remember the original wording? And wouldn't they remember when part of it was abrogated? This destroys the Muslim myth that the collective memory of the Muslim community can somehow guarantee the perfect preservation of the Quran. Muslims didn't come close to preserving the Quran accurately until they started writing it down and burning variants, and even then, they didn't do a very good job. So, once again, Muslim sources obliterate a Muslim myth. But instead of getting mad at their scholars and apologists for lying to them, Muslims will get mad at me for exposing the lie. What kind of religion causes people to love lies and hate the truth? A false religion. For more videos proving that the standard Muslim narrative of the Quran has more holes than a Tetley teabag, check out this playlist, which begins with the comedic genius and radiant personalities of David Wood and Nabil Qureshi.
This is not a joke, brothers and sisters.